Hello, I'm Dr. David Santos. I'm continuing on in our studies in Pagan Myths and Religions. We're looking at these traditions in the classical world from about 600 BC to 600 AD. In this video, we're going to be looking specifically at journeys, trials, and the edge of the world. We're exploring heroic and religious journeys across mythology and faith. Let's jump into the introduction. Let's start with the meaning of the hero's journey. Throughout human history, cultures across the world have told stories of epic journeys, heroic quests, and spiritual trials. These stories are not just tales of adventure, but reflections of deeper truths about human nature, personal transformation, and the struggle to find meaning in an uncertain world. Now, why do these stories resonate so deeply? Why do heroes, both mythical and historical, always seem to embark on these perilous journeys? The answers lie in the universal human experience of struggle, growth, and perseverance. Whether it's Jason's search for the golden fleece, Odysseus' trials on his way home, Aeneas' divine mission, or Abraham's journey into the unknown, these narratives reflect the human need to embark on quests that test character, endurance, and faith. There's a universal appeal of journeys that can be found in mythology and religion. Journeys serve as the foundation of many mythological and religious traditions, appearing in Greek epics where heroes battle gods and monsters to achieve greatness, Roman mythology where journeys shape the destiny of an empire, Hindu and Buddhist teachings where journeys reflect cycles of rebirth and enlightenment, biblical narratives where figures like Abraham, Moses, and Paul undergo physical and spiritual trials to fulfill their purpose within God's divine order. At their core, these stories speak to fundamental truths. To achieve wisdom, one must step into the unknown, face trials, and emerge transformed. Journeys are rarely simple or straightforward. They're full of obstacles, temptation, and tests. In myth and religion, these trials are often serve as refining moments where the hero or believer is forced to confront weakness, fear, and doubt before emerging wiser or closer to the divine. So we see common elements in all of these, like physical endurance. Heroes like Odysseus and Rama and Aeneas have these incredible times where they have to endure hardship. They're exiled. There's war, all these kinds of things. There's moral and ethical tests. Sometimes they're conquered. Other times the hero fails. Divine intervention where gods and spirits, divine beings often help or hinder the hero. In every case, the trials of the journey are not just external, they shape the hero's identity and purpose. Overall, we see two key points. We see physical travel mirrors spiritual transformation. And the second, the unknown represents fears, trials, and the search for wisdom. And we can see the greatest lessons in myth and religion come not from the destination, but from the journey itself. And again, as we always do, we will compare and contrast ideas within ancient myth and religion with that of what we at times refer to as the true myth. Really, the actual supernatural accounts of divine revelation as found in Scripture. With that, let's move into our first section. We're going to look at two of the most well-known journeys within Greek mythology. Because we've done other videos on these, we will just sort of gloss over the top of them. The first one being, if we're looking at Greek mythology and journeys as tests of valor and fate, we have to start first with Jason and the Argonauts, which is the quest for the Golden Fleece. In this myth, Jason is aided by Hera and Medea, who he embarks on his perilous journey aboard the Argo. That's the ship. He encounters harpies, clashing rocks, and treacherous kings. These all test the Argonauts. And the theme in that is divine assistance along with heroism through perseverance and consequences of broken oaths. We see Jason being this heroic figure, which ultimately comes out victorious. But if we looked very closely at Jason, we discover that he's not unscathed. He is, while he may be the hero of the story, he is not always completely what we would call a virtuous hero. So he's got some failures as well. The second one would simply be Odysseus's voyage, where he has encounters with the gods and monsters. And Odysseus, of course, is one of the main figures in the Iliad. Odysseus has a second story called the Odyssey, and the Odyssey is his 10-year journey in order to get home. Odysseus has many temptations, has many battles, and his journey is kind of like Gilligan's Island. He set out on a 3-day tour and ended up being gone for 10 years while his wife and family were at home waiting for him, hoping he'd make it back soon. He eventually does, and is able to fend off all of his wife's suitors. But Odysseus' long trial-filled journey home from Troy represents both physical and inner struggles. He encounters the Cyclops, along with the Sirens, who test his wisdom and endurance. He has these contrasts between his cunning and his heroism. But the major theme is the role of the gods in human fate, the trials of perseverance, and the struggle for homecoming. And all through this, he's at times helped by the gods. He's hindered by other gods. He has some that are on his side and some that aren't. But eventually does make it home. Although he has to make certain decisions about that at times. Let's jump into the next section, Roman mythology, Aeneas' journey and the destiny of Rome. We'll take a little bit closer look at this one. The Aeneid is composed by Virgil in the 1st century BC, served as a Roman foundational epic paralleling the Homeric tradition, but reshaping the hero's journey to reflect Roman ideas of duty, sacrifice, and destiny. Aeneas' journey is distinct from those of Jason and Odysseus in that it is not about personal heroism, cunning, or self-gain, but about fulfilling a divine mission for the future of Rome. His descent into the underworld is the central turning point in his journey, reinforcing his duty and acceptance of fate. Aeneas' journey to the underworld, so he has this descent into the underworld. It kind of mirrors Odysseus' journey in the Odyssey, but with some significant differences. Aeneas' journey to the underworld is not just a test, but a revelation of Rome's future glory, a prophetic vision of what is to come. And Aeneas' descent into the underworld, before he can descend, Aeneas must obtain the golden fleece, a symbol of divine permission and his worthiness to enter the underworld. This task represents the rite of passage for a Roman hero, requiring both fate and divine favor. He has some key encounters. First one being Charon, the river Styx. And the river Styx, the ferryman Charon initially refuses Aeneas' passage, but he is still alive. As he is still alive, once Aeneas presents the golden bow, Charon reluctantly allows him to cross. The symbolism here is the rite of passage, of course. The unburied souls, Aeneas encounters spirits who cannot cross the Styx because they lack proper burial rites. This reflects the Roman emphasis on funerary rituals and respect for the dead. So that tells us a lot about what they believed regarding the afterlife. Next key section, the fields of mourning, lost loves. Aeneas sees Dido, his former lover, now a shadow among the dead. She refuses to speak to him, symbolizing his duty over personal love. We have a contrast with Odysseus. Odysseus seeks personal understanding in the underworld, but Aeneas is reminded that Rome's fate matters more than his personal sorrow. Next section, souls of the warriors and judgment of sinners. Aeneas passes the Tartarus, where sinners face eternal punishment. This emphasizes Roman morality. Those who violate duty and order suffer after death. And Aeneas finds his father, who reveals the future of Rome. He sees great Roman leaders, Romulus and Augustus and Caesar, and future heroes. And he gains all this great insight. And here's just a quote from Virgil's Aeneid. "Remember, Roman, these will be your acts. These will be your arts. To rule the nations with your power, to impose law on peace, to spare the vanquished, and to war down the proud." So, end quote. This prophecy legitimizes Rome's destiny as the future imperial power. And like Odysseus or Jason, Aeneid is not just a hero, he's a symbol of Roman identity and purpose. Some quick points about continuing about Aeneas. Aeneas embodies the Roman virtue of pietas, loyalty to the gods, family, and state. His visit to the underworld confirms that he must sacrifice personal happiness for Rome's future. We also see fate being involved, fatum, as an unchangeable force. Unlike Odysseus, who defies the gods, Aeneas fully submits to fate. His journey is not about overcoming trials for personal glory, but about fulfilling a destiny he cannot escape. And there's a cost to the empire. The underworld shows that Rome's greatness comes at a cost: war, sacrifice, and death. Aeneas sees that he must wage battle, suffer loss, and prioritize Rome over himself. Aeneas is to establish Rome. He has a divine test: love versus duty and war, pietas or duty, submission to fate. At the end, Rome's foundation is secured. Our conclusion to this section is Aeneas' descent into the underworld is not just a journey of self-discovery, but a revelation of Rome's divine destiny. Unlike Odysseus, who seeks wisdom for himself, Aeneas' journey confirms that his personal desires must be set aside for the greater purpose of founding an empire. And we have 3 points. Jason's journey is about personal ambition and betrayal. Odysseus' journey is about endurance and cunning. Aeneas' journey is about duty and submission to fate. As we move forward, we'll see how this concept of heroic journeys extends beyond mythology into religious traditions, where trials and voyages take on spiritual significance. So, moving into the next section, we're going to look at religious journeys in ancient paganism and religious tradition, specifically looking at religious traditions across the world that contain journeys that parallel heroic quests. These journeys are often spiritual rather than physical, unlike Jason, Odysseus, and Aeneas, who seek tangible goals such as a throne or homeland. Religious journeys emphasize inner transformation, wisdom, and liberation from suffering. In Buddhism, journeys occur across multiple lifetimes, each contributing to the soul's path towards enlightenment. So it's a very different kind of journey than we were previously talking about. The stories of Siddhartha Gautama, or the Buddha, his past lives, and his own reunification of worldly life demonstrate how the heroic journey in Buddhism is one of self-overcoming and spiritual awakening. Let's start by looking at the religious traditions across the world, which contain journeys that parallel heroic quests. The first one being the Jataka tales. In their collection of over 500 stories recounting previous incarnations of the Buddha before his final birth, in the Siddhartha Gautama version, these stories serve as moral lessons, illustrating how the Buddha gradually perfected wisdom, compassion, and patience over many lifetimes. So here's just kind of a quick overview. The Jataka stories depict Siddhartha in previous incarnations as animals and kings, merchants, or sages. Each story shows him facing trials that refine his virtues, eventually leading him to final enlightenment. Karma plays a central role. Good actions in one life shape wisdom and progress in the next. The tales align with the Buddhist concept of the Bodhisattva, which one who delays nirvana to guide others towards enlightenment. So let's look at several points here. Key Jataka tales of heroic journeys. First, the tale of the Monkey King. In one life, the Buddha is a noble monkey king who sacrifices himself to save his tribe. The moral lesson is true leadership requires selflessness and sacrifice. The tale of the prince Janaka, a prince shipwrecked in the ocean. I apologize if I butchered that one. I had it perfect before. Anyways, prince shipwrecked on the ocean refuses to give up swimming for days until he's saved by a goddess. Moral lesson is about perseverance and wisdom, which are greater than fear and despair. And the third one is the tale of the Vesantara. The Buddha, as a prince, renounces his wealth, power, and even his children to practice ultimate generosity. The moral lesson is detachment from material desires is a necessity for enlightenment. So these tales are just a small section of what can be found, but they're illustrations of how past life trials led to the Buddha's ultimate enlightenment. Key themes are trial refine the souls. Like Odysseus and Aeneas, the future Buddha faces challenges that shape his character. Wisdom through lifetimes, unlike Greek heroes who seek external victories, the Buddhist journey is inward, and moral perfection As the ultimate goal, the stories emphasize that self-sacrifice, patience, and wisdom are the highest values. Let's just take a little bit closer look at the story of Buddha, beginning with the birth of Buddha, prophecy and divine intervention. The life of Siddhartha follows a classic heroic journey structure, beginning with a prophecy, divine signs, trials, and ultimate enlightenment. Queen Maya has a dream of a white elephant entering her womb, a sign that her son will be a great ruler or an enlightened sage. When Siddhartha is born, a sage predicts that he will either become a universal king or the Buddha. His father fears that Siddhartha will renounce the throne, so he shelters him from all suffering. For the four passing sights, the call of a heroic journey. Here we have 4 points here. As the young prince Siddhartha encounters suffering for the first time, he witnesses an old man and the reality of an age, a sick man, the suffering of disease, a dead man, the certainty of death, and a monk, the path of renunciation of the path of spiritual seeking. Let's just put it in that sense for now. So we have these revelations, which is a calling to him in a sense. At age 29, he makes the radical choice to abandon his wealth, power, and family to seek spiritual truth. Cuts his hair, removes his jewels, and dons the robes of a wandering monk. This moment mirrors Aeneas' acceptance of fate, but whereas Aeneas sacrifices personal happiness for Rome, Siddhartha sacrifices worldly attachments for enlightenment. So let's look at the trials of Buddha's journey. Blended those two words for you before. Anyways, extreme asceticism. Siddhartha practices self-mortification, nearly starving himself in the search for wisdom. Temptation by Mara. The demon Mara tries to distract him with fear and desire, much like how Odysseus faced the sirens and Aeneas faced Dito's temptations. Enlightenment under the Bodhi tree. After meditating for 49 days, he attained nirvana, realizing not the band, not just real enlightenment, not grunge music, realizing the Four Noble Truths. So, broadly speaking, Buddha, he becomes the Buddha, freeing others from suffering. Unlike Greek heroes who strive for glory and empire, the Buddha's journey is about renouncing power, whereas Jason and Odysseus seek homecoming. Siddhartha seeks escape of the cycle of rebirth. Like Aeneas, he accepts a greater calling, but his mission is spiritual rather than political. Conclusions here. In Greek and Roman mythology, journeys are about external achievements, treasure, home, empire. Buddhism, the journey is an internal path to enlightenment, where trials refine wisdom. Like Aeneas' vision of Rome in the underworld, Siddhartha receives a revelation under the Bodhi tree, forever altering course of human history. So we can consider these kinds of questions. How do Buddhist journey compare to heroic quests in mythology? What's the significance of those virtues within the myth of Buddha versus Greek myths? And how does the idea of trials leading to wisdom apply across cultures and religions? So we see and we discussed both similarities and differences of these stories. So we're going to take in another one. The next section, we're going to explore Hindu journeys where duty and cosmic order play a central role, examining Rama's exile. And so let's jump directly into that. So Hindi epics, we're going to look at the exile, duty, and cosmic trials. The Hindu epics, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, are among the longest and most profound literary works in the world history. They depict heroic journeys, divine intervention, and the struggle between duty, or dharma, and personal desires. Unlike Greek and Roman epics, which focus on glory, conquest, personal ambition, Hindu epics emphasize moral integrity, righteous leadership, and cosmic order. Now, if you've been with us for a while, you'll recognize that especially the Greek virtues have a lot of similarities here. Things like moral integrity, righteous leadership, cosmic order. Boy, we've spent a lot of time on cosmic order within Greco-Roman traditions and other earlier ones as well, especially when we go back into the ancient world, pre-600 BC, we see those same kinds of themes over and over and over in Mesopotamia and Egypt and others as well. So we're comparing some of the elements, though, that Greek and Roman epics do have characters who focus on some of these other ambitions, personal ambitions and things. Especially like if we look at the Iliad, we could look at Achilles. And Achilles is one of the best examples of this, where his primary focus is on glory and honor. Glory and honor for himself. He's not really there to advance the cause of a greater cause. And you can see that in the way that he complains about the entire event. And if you read the Iliad, one of the major themes is watching Iliad sit around and complain and just act in this melancholy fashion. So, but we see other figures within Greco-Roman traditions that are extremely virtuous. So I don't want to dismiss them completely, as frankly, as a lot of the literature does. So moving into the Ramayana, where Prince Rama is exiled and we see his trials. This work, composed by Valmiki in the 5th to 4th century BC, tells the epic tale of Rama, an avatar of Vishnu, who undergoes exile, loss, and war to uphold his duty. His journey is not for personal gain, but to fulfill divine justice. So let's get an overview of the myth. Rama, heir to the throne, is banished for 14 years due to palace intrigue. He embraces exile rather than resisting, demonstrating his devotion to duty or dharma. Sita, his wife, and his brother join him in the wilderness. The demon king kidnaps Sita, leading to Rama's quest across India and final war in Lanka. So we have some key trials. Despite his rightful claim to the throne, Rama submits to fate, leaving without resistance. We see a test of endurance. He lives in the wilderness, facing demonic threats and moral trials. We see contrasts with the temptations that take place. Within the trial, we see the abduction of Sita and a call to action. Ravana deceives and abducts Sita, sparking Rama's journey to rescue her. Rama forms alliances with the monkey god and the Vanara army, showing the need for divine support in trials. We see the bridge to Lanka, symbolizing the hero's transition from exile to divine warrior. So we see a lot of those same kinds of elements, for example, in Heracles. Those kinds of transition things, those kinds of trials. Let's move to the next section here. The battle against Ravana and the triumph of Dharma. Rama's final war with Ravana represents the cosmic struggle between righteousness and evil. Unlike Odysseus, who fights for his home, or Aeneas, who fights for Rome's destiny, Rama fights for divine justice. Karma. So we're looking at these only from the guys that were about these long journeys. We're not bringing in Heracles and Hercules, same guys, or some of these others. Here, karma and moral responsibility. Rama defeats Ravana not through mere strength, but because of divine righteousness. Okay? So we can see a lot of similarities with some of the accounts that we've looked at in the past. We see a lot of differences as well. Rama's exile demonstrates submission to that divine will. Sita's faithfulness symbolizes unwavering devotion, much like Penelope's loyalty to Odysseus. Next theme, the ideal king and righteous leadership. Rama's journey is a test of his moral fitness to rule, emphasizing justice, humility, and self-sacrifice. His story influenced later Indian kingship models where rulers were expected to follow dharma before personal ambition. And third point, the cosmic struggle between good and evil. Unlike Greek myths, which focus on human ambition and fate, the Ramana is a moral and spiritual battle. So, lots to consider there. Let's move to this next section and see the cosmic battle and Krishna's divine guidance. The Mahabharata is it's the longest epic in world literature and revolves around the great war of Kurukshetra. Unlike the Ramayana, which focuses on a single hero, the Mahabharata presents multiple warriors, moral dilemmas, and divine interventions. We'll give you a quick overview of the epic. The Pandava brothers, these are the rightful heirs, are exiled after being deceived in a gambling match by their rivals, the Kauravas. And after years of exile, they return to reclaim their kingdom, leading to the great war at Kurukshetra. If they read the Bible about and understood about the dangers of gambling, they wouldn't have fallen into this, but that's here and there. Arjuna, the greatest Pandava warrior, faces a crisis of faith on the battlefield. Krishna, the incarnation of Vishnu, reveals divine wisdom in the Bhagavad Gita. Sorry about that. Teaching Arjuna the path of duty and spiritual enlightenment. Okay? So we have the key trials. First one is the exile and suffering. Deceived in a rigged dice game, the Pandavas are forced into 13 years of exile. During the exile, they faced all these different challenges and tests of patience and virtue and commitment. Like the Aeneas, wandering after the fall of Troy, the Pandavas must suffer before fulfilling their destiny. The Arjuna's moral dilemma. On the eve of battle, Arjuna collapses in doubt. Unwilling to fight against his own relatives, Krishna, serving as his divine charioteer, reveals his work explaining the true nature of duty. Arjuna learns that duty transcends personal emotion. He must act according to cosmic law, not personal achievement. Action without self-desire, that's karma yoga. He should fight without concern for victory or defeat. In faith, in divine wisdom, the highest path is surrendering to God's will. And that's a Bhakti yoga. Okay. Themes. We see conflict between duty and emotion. We see divine intervention and moral law. So in conflict between duty and emotion, we see Arjuna struggling with fighting against his own family, much like Aeneas struggles with leaving Dido. However, Krishna teaches that duty must come before personal feelings. Divine intervention, moral law. Krishna does not merely offer strategic advice, but like Athena does for Odysseus, he reveals the cosmic order. Unlike Greek gods, who are often arbitrary, Krishna represents absolute wisdom and moral truth. The nature of war and spiritual growth. Unlike the Iliad, where war is about glory, we see in these works war as a cosmic necessity, and Krishna teaches that one must act according to the divine will without attachment to the results. So, in some ways, we see a lot of similarities. In other areas, we see tremendous differences. And we just have a little chart here for you to be able to look at some of the goals, obstacles, key strengths, divine guidance, and the outcome of each of these. You can take a look at these in the future. Just want to break that down for you. Break it down. Our conclusion here is duty is the highest heroic ideal. Unlike Greek and Roman heroes, Rama and Arjuna do not seek personal glory, but fulfill this cosmic duty. Righteous actions or dharma is the greater than individual desires, making Hindu epics spiritually profound rather than militarily driven. And the Bhagavata, blew it again, sorry. This one, the Bhagavad Gita, remain one of the world's most influential spiritual texts, teaching that wisdom comes from surrendering to divine will. So, next section, we're gonna look at one of the final ones, Zoroastrianism, and the religious journeys focusing on the final cosmic battle and the ultimate renewal of the world, and compare that a bit with Christian eschatology. Actually, just because of some time constraints, we're going to hold on to Zoroastrianism for the next series, and we'll include that there. Here, we just want to bring this to a conclusion with duty as the highest heroic ideal, and overall looking at what these journeys represented broadly. And when we look at all of these stories about journeys, whether they're divine journeys or whether they are journeys that had some sort of goal attributed to it, whether it's personal gain or whether it's broader glory, whatever it was. They're all seeking something. In Odysseus, he's trying to get home. In whether it's Buddha or whether it's the Hindu myths and their traditions, whichever one it was, as we went through this, there's always the idea of bringing righteousness to their location, or Aeneas going and establishing Rome, which would become the Roman Empire, all these different things. And yet, when we turn to the Bible and we look at Abraham, I just want to consider this last thing from the book of Hebrews chapter 11. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out of the place which he would receive as an inheritance, and he went out not knowing where he was going. So he's taking a journey. By faith, he dwelt in the land of promise, as in a foreign country, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he waited for a city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. So within the biblical tradition, we see something completely different really presented to us. And even when we talk about, say, 1 Corinthians 15, these bodies themselves only being like tents that will eventually, we'll put off these tents, which are corrupted, and putting off our immorality and our mortality and putting on this immortality. We see all those kinds of things. And here Abraham waiting for a city which was not built by human hands, but its maker is God. And if we're going to go scoot down just a little bit in that passage, we see by faith Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance, and went out not knowing where he's going. Just this entire concept of journey to the end of the world. He's not going to the end of the world, but he's definitely going someplace that he's unaware of. And it's gonna be a completely new thing. We see Abraham being in this chapter because he was called and because he obeyed and waiting for that city. If we look, starting in verse 17, by faith Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac, and he who had received the promise offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said, in Isaac your seed shall be called, concluding that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from which he also received him in figurative sense. And it goes on, by faith Isaac blessed Jacob, and all these different things. But we see Abraham being called out on this journey, out to an unknown location, being tested, and tested because he knows who the true living God of the Bible is, the God that's going to become the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the God that brings about divine supernatural revelation, gives it to humankind through a specific group of people, and gives a covenant to Abraham in a very specific way, in which is also promised all the families of the world will be blessed through that one family. So God turns this whole thing upside down, and rather than putting the weight of bringing about the restoration of Rome or one of these other mythological accounts that we looked at, bringing about, relying on human ingenuity and perseverance and all these things, God says, I will do this through you. And as I make this covenant, I place the entirety of the weight of the covenant upon myself. It's a one-sided covenant. And we could praise God so much for that and see the contrast between these stories that we're looking at to understand the history of the world and history of myth and religion, and how alternate religions understand the world so that we can better glorify God and do a better job of revealing to others who our God is and what's different about him and his written word. So I hope this study has been a blessing to you. It's been a tough one for me, and just because there's a lot of material that's less familiar to us, put it that way. And but it's a tremendous study for us, and I'm looking forward to the next one. And I will see you then. God bless.